Stop. Before you put another onion set into the ground, you need to see this. Look at the size of this onion. It's literally bigger than my fist. Now, look at this sad little thing. Most gardeners end up with the second one. And let's be honest, it's not because you didn't work hard. It is incredibly frustrating to spend months weeding, watering, and breaking your back in the sun, only to harvest onions the size of golf balls. You start wondering, is it my soil? Was it the weather? Or do I just have bad luck? Well, it's none of those. The truth is, you must never plant onions without this one secret ingredient. If you get this right, your onions won't just grow. They will explode in size. In today's guide, I'm pulling back the curtain on my entire process for growing giant onions all season long. We're talking about the secret weapon nutrient that 90% of people ignore, the exact planting depth to keep your bulbs from getting choked, and the number one mistake that causes onions to rot in the ground. Before we dive into the dirt, I want to hear from you. What is the biggest onion you've ever grown? Drop the size in the comments below. And if you're ready to fill your pantry with giant, homegrown produce this year, hit that subscribe button and let's get growing. All right, let's get straight to the secret weapon. Most folks think they can just throw some all-purpose fertilizer in the hole and call it a day. But if you want giant onions, you need to understand one thing. Onions are heavy feeders, especially when it comes to phosphorus, the secret bone meal. Why bone meal? Well, think of phosphorus as the engine for root development. In the first few weeks, your onion isn't worried about that big bulb yet. It's trying to build a massive root system. Without a strong foundation, the plant simply won't have the plumbing needed to pump nutrients into the bulb later on. Many gardeners see their onions stall halfway through the season. That's usually because the roots hit a wall. I remember a few years back, my neighbor and I planted the exact same variety on the same day. He used a standard 10-10-10 fertilizer, but I added a generous handful of bone meal to my rows. By midsummer, his onions looked okay, but mine had necks as thick as a garden hose. That's the phosphorus at work. Here's the pro tip. Don't just sprinkle it on top. You want to work it into the soil, about 2 to 3 inches deep, right where the roots will be. Onions aren't great at searching for food. You have to put the buffet right under their noses. A word of caution, though. A lot of folks make the mistake of overdoing it with high nitrogen fertilizers too early. Nitrogen grows beautiful green leaves, which is good. But if you have too much, the plant forgets to grow the bulb and just keeps making foliage. If your onions look like giant leeks but have tiny bottoms, you've probably used too much nitrogen and not enough phosphorus. Get that phosphorus in the ground first, and you're setting yourself up for a record-breaking harvest. Now, you could have the best soil and the best secret weapon in the world. But if you pick the wrong variety for where you live, you've already lost the game before it even started. This is the part that trips up almost every beginner. Onions are photoperiodic. That's just a fancy way of saying they decide when to start growing a bulb based on how many hours of daylight they get. Short day onions. These need about 10 to 12 hours of light. If you live in the South, think Texas, Florida, or Georgia. These are your best friends. Long day onions. These need 14 to 16 hours. If you're up north like Minnesota or New York, these are the ones that will get massive for you. Intermediate day onions. These fall right in the middle. I've seen so many people in the north try to grow southern varieties, and they wonder why their onions stay the size of a marble. It's because the plant thinks it's time to stop growing leaves and start making a bulb way too early. And here is the golden rule of timing. You want as much green growth as possible before the onion starts bulbing. Why? Because every single leaf you see on top represents one layer of the onion inside. If you have 10 big, healthy leaves, you're going to have a 10-layer giant onion. If you only have 4 leaves when the days get long, you're getting a tiny onion. Period. My advice, get your onions in the ground as soon as the soil can be worked in the spring. They can handle a bit of a chill. In fact, they like it. Many folks wait until it's warm and cozy outside, but by then, you've missed the window for that massive leaf growth. Remember, more leaves equals more layers equals giant onions. But once you have the right variety and the perfect timing, how you actually stick them in the ground is the next big hurdle. Most people plant them way too deep. Think of your onion bulb like a balloon. If you try to blow up a balloon inside a tight wooden box, it's never going to get big. Right. Well, that wooden box is your soil. If your soil is hard, compacted, or full of heavy clay, your onions are going to struggle just to breathe, let alone expand. To get those trophy-sized bulbs, you need to prepare a luxury bed for them. Onions absolutely crave loose, well-draining soil that is rich in organic matter. If you can't easily stick your finger into the soil up to the second knuckle, it's too hard. Here is my recipe for the perfect onion bed. I always mix in a heavy layer of well-rotted compost or aged manure. Onions are what we call heavy feeders. They need a constant supply of nutrients throughout the season. But more importantly, that compost keeps the soil fluffy. It allows the roots to spread out deep and wide without hitting a wall. Now, pay close attention to this. Onions are very sensitive to soil pH. They like it slightly acidic to neutral, somewhere between 6.0 and 7.0. If your soil is too sour, too acidic, your onions will just sit there and pout. They won't take up the nutrients you're giving them, no matter how much fertilizer you throw at them. I always add a bit of garden lime a few weeks before planting if my soil test shows it's too acidic. One common mistake back and folks often make, planting in a spot where water sits after a rain. Onions hate wet feet. If they sit in soggy soil for too long, the roots will rot, and the bulbs will turn to mush before they ever get a chance to grow. If you have heavy clay soil, don't give up. Just build a raised bed. It's the easiest way to control the drainage and ensure your soil stays loose all season long. Trust me, you take care of the soil, and the soil will take care of the onions. But even with perfect soil, if you stick them too deep into the ground, you're going to run into a huge problem. Here is the deal. Most people treat onion sets like they're planting flower bulbs or garlic. They dig a deep hole, drop the onion in, and bury the whole thing. Stop right there. If you do that, you are literally suffocating your harvest. You see, an onion bulb doesn't grow deep underground like a potato. It needs to expand outward. If you bury it too deep, the heavy weight of the soil acts like a corset, squeezing the onion and preventing it from ever reaching that giant status. You'll end up with what I call bottleneck onions long, skinny things that never bulb up. So, how deep should you go? The rule of thumb is simple. Only bury the bottom 1 inch of the plant or set. You want the top of the bulb to be right at the surface, or even slightly poking out. I like to say you should just tuck them in rather than bury them. This allows the bulb to push the soil aside easily as it grows. Now, let's talk about spacing. If you want giant onions, you cannot crowd them. I know it's tempting to squeeze as many as possible into one row, but onions are selfish. They don't like to share. If they're touching their neighbors, they'll stop growing. For those trophy-sized bulbs, give them at least 5 to 6 inches of space between each plant. This gives the roots plenty of room to roam and ensures that each onion gets its fair share of that secret weapon nutrient we talked about earlier. Here's a little trick many people miss. As the onion starts to grow and the bulb begins to swell, you can actually pull a little bit of the soil away from the top of the bulb. Exposing the upper half of the onion to the air and sun helps the outer skins dry properly and gives the bulb even more room to expand. But listen, even if you plant them perfectly, there is one thing that will kill your progress faster than anything else, and that's neglecting the liquid gold they need during the peak of summer. If you want to know the real difference between a hobby gardener and a giant onion pro, it's all in how they handle the water and the food. Onions are about 90% water, so if you let your soil turn into a desert, your onions are going to stay the size of marbles. Onions have very shallow roots. They don't go deep to find moisture. This means they need a steady, consistent supply of water. If the soil dries out and then gets soaked, the onion gets stressed. A stressed onion will stop growing. Or it's even worse. It might bolt, grow a flower stalk, which ruins your bulb. My liquid gold rule. I water deeply once or twice a week, depending on the heat. You want the soil to be moist like a wrung-out sponge, not a swamp. But here is the kicker. Every 2 weeks, I give them a liquid snack. In the first half of the season, I use a high-nitrogen liquid fertilizer, something like fish emulsion or a compost tea. This builds those big, lush green leaves we talked about earlier. Remember, big leaves today mean big bulbs tomorrow. But pay attention, because here is where many people mess up. Once you see the ground starting to crack around the base of the onion, that's the bulbing stage. You need to change your strategy. Stop the high nitrogen food. If you keep feeding them nitrogen now, you'll get a neck as thick as a tree, but the bulb will stay small. Switch to a fertilizer higher in potassium. This tells the plant, okay, stop making leaves and start pumping all that energy into the bulb. And here is a secret tip for the pros. about 2 weeks before you plan to harvest. Stop watering entirely. I know it sounds crazy, but letting the soil dry out at the very end tells the onion it's time to go dormant. This thickens the skin and makes sure your giant onions don't rot in storage. If you see your onions starting to flower, you've hit a bump in the road. But don't worry, there's a way to handle that, and a few other deadly mistakes we need to talk about next. The 3 big killers of giant onions are weeds, bolting, and too much nitrogen. Onions are terrible at competing. A single big weed can steal all the liquid gold and nutrients meant for your bulb. Pull them by hand to avoid damaging the onion's shallow roots. Next, watch for bolting. That's when a flower stalk shoots out due to temperature stress. If you see one, snap it off immediately. That onion is done growing and won't store well, so eat it first. Lastly, don't kill them with kindness. If you keep dumping nitrogen fertilizer late in the season, the neck stays thick and juicy. A thick neck never seals properly, which means your giant onion will rot in weeks instead of lasting months. Stop the heavy feeding once the bulbs start to swell. When about 50% of the green tops flop over and kink at the neck, your onions are yelling, "We're ready." Don't just yank them by the hair. Use a garden fork to gently lift them from underneath to avoid bruising the skins. Now, for the most critical step, curing. Lay your onions in a dry, shady spot with a good breeze for 2 to 3 weeks. Never leave them in direct, scorching sun or they'll sunburn and rot. You're waiting for those outer skins to become papery and the roots to feel like dry straw. Once cured, snip the tops an inch above the bulb and store them in mesh bags or crates in a cool, dark place. Follow this, and you'll be eating giant, crunchy onions all through the winter. It's the ultimate reward for your hard work. So, there you have it. Growing giant, trophy-sized onions isn't just a matter of luck. It's about having a plan, from that phosphorus secret weapon to the way you tuck them into the soil. Every little detail adds up to a massive harvest. Honestly, there is nothing more satisfying than walking into your pantry in the middle of winter and pulling out a firm, beautiful onion the size of a bowling ball that you grew from a tiny set. If you've struggled with small, disappointing onions in the past, I want you to try this method on just 1 row this season. I promise you, the results will speak for themselves. Don't overthink it. Just get your soil loose, get that secret nutrient in the ground, and watch the magic happen. If this video gave you the confidence to get out there and get your hands dirty, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more gardeners like you. And if you want to see exactly how I make my own organic liquid fertilizer for that mid-season boost, make sure to click the video on the screen right now. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a tip. Thanks for hanging out in the garden with me today. Now, get out there and grow something giant. I'll see you in the next one.